This is really important. This is really important. What God is saying to us during this day. Have you ever been by a wheat field and watched the wind blow and the wheat goes like this, it goes like this, like an African dance, right? Have you ever danced? Okay, that's what we're doing here today, right? We're moving together in the dance. Because that's the way the kingdom works. It doesn't work with the governor top down determining what we will do. But Jesus talks about seeds and grains of wheat that grow up. And as they grow up, then they move together. And that's how the kingdom advances. And that's what we're doing here today. And so we've got local leaders, we've got centers of urban leadership, we've got urban.
Your video for the Zoom. Okay. It's okay now.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Or Zoom sorry.
You want this video on? This one is on. The video is on. Don't believe it. Okay? Thank you. He's doing a great job.
Yes.
Yeah, he's wonderful. Have you guys see it? The stars which are doing it. You know, you talked before somebody else question about how do you
Just a minute. Put your volume all the way down.
volume is off.
Yes.
Speak here.
Mute.
So we know how we can do this, yeah. So you were talking before about publishing. This is the way to publish. All right. Each of your presentations, you've sent a document, 2-page outline, entire presentation. And we've got people, Lillian here, where's Lillian? She just volunteered to help us. We've got 2 volunteers over here, people typing it up. We'll integrate those, send it back to you. You can edit it, and you've got your paper, right? This is almost a book, but maybe not quite. I've got 2 other consultations that will become books. We have to look at the quality of what we've done here. Probably it's not, we haven't quite designed it around making a book, but this is how you but then books have to be graphical, and the publishers want this book I have here, full of pictures. People read that, they look at the pictures, right? The publishers will not publish that. So you're going to have to create your own publishing system. We'll get that. Okay. We've got commonalities together. So here we are, different organizations. African Enterprise with Stephen Bodo. I'll be speaking in a few minutes. Urban Africa 2050, we'll talk about that a bit later. With Stefan and he and Stephen will speak together. We've got commonalities. Incarnation, sacrifice, suffering, simplicity, joy, right? We can go on and identify a number of those, which in the apostolic orders we call the lifestyle and values. Some of us are Franciscan styles. You're with the church army, you've got that heritage. Right? So there's some commonalities. And then we've got diversification. So the reason I speak of grains of wheat is that when we're together, there's a synergy that goes on, and within there's a competition that happens. It can be healthy or unhealthy. Healthy means we see what the others are doing, we're envious, right? Ecclesiastes says all work is because of envy. So there's actually a healthy envy, like, oh, okay, they're doing that, I should do that. Huh? But there is a collaboration, okay, let's help each other to do our work. So it's not a negative competition, it's simply How do we foster each other, push each other forward? How do we advance each other? So competition's okay. Collaboration then is a part of that, but not everything is collaborative. So what's God saying during the stage? I believe he's saying we need to move from the incarnation of a babe in a manger to the incarnation of the God who creates cities. This is the work of the Holy Spirit as he moves from creating the universe to creating us, creating cities. God, the Holy Spirit, so you may not speak in tongues. It's okay because it's only one of the gifts. But if you do, Paul says it's a great gift. However, this Holy Spirit doesn't spend all of his time in church, raising his arms, speaking in tongues. He speaks with voices across the universe, and he has done since before the beginning of time, because now the astrophysicists said we were wrong, there may not be a beginning of time. He speaks, he continues to speak, and as he speaks, and as he carries the word, the other part of the Trinity, creation has occurred. And these very desks and this microphone, this building, they're made from stuff that the Holy Spirit has created. This is his activity. And so when we speak of multiplying centers for urban mission, we're taking the human incarnation, we're saying, let's move it to another level of incarnation in communities across Africa and India, right? And the globe. This is spirit work, Holy Spirit work, even if you're not dancing in tongues. You understand? So how do we move with the Spirit? That's what he's saying to us. Right? Now, we can pick a figure of 25. Let's see 25 centers for urban mission. Right? That's actually, I think it's already happening. So that's less than faith, quite honestly. But 25, let's start with that. The networks that goes developing have nodes, which are centers. They have linkages, and then they have electricity that flows through those networks. So yesterday and this morning, as I was speaking about social entrepreneurship, this is the electricity. The tool is the electricity. The centers are centers, they're the nodes. But the heart, the passion, is the movement of these ideas, and they're outworking in action. So that's what flows through the networks. It's great to have centers, but if they don't do anything, what happens? And the ideas flow between Ghana and Nigeria and Liberia, the great country of Liberia. So we've got these master's degrees, we're talking about PhDs, certificates, different aspects of educational development, which is part of our DNA, and it sparks off the activity, it's reflection, action, it extends the activity. We start with grassroots church planting, very simple grassroots church planting. We add to it economic discipleship. We move from that to savings groups. We move from that to social entrepreneurship. We move from small businesses to medium-sized businesses. But Lisa, what's God saying about these things? Here's my take on it over time. There's Holy Spirit. He's saying that if we have 25 centers, we're going to have to massively resource those centers. So I was talking with the team, the mission team yesterday over dinner. And then I asked David Andrew, he is, how much would it cost each year? It's supposed to recruit at least 10 students, so 20 students running a program. That's a good viable unit. how much would it cost for scholarships? So we're trying to calculate the figures. We came up with 27,000 scholarships per year for each Mantul and each African institution. I think that's what we came up with.
Came up with each year 14, 2 years 28.
2 years, it's 28.
Yeah.
So each year, 14 students.
14,000 US dollars.
Right.
Then for the 2-year program is
28,000.
Yeah.
That's with the students paying some fees.
Yeah.
But essentially, that's what it was paid.
10 students, and that's with Uganda.
Right. So that's 10 students per year. So the program sustains 20 students consistently. Okay, so if you had an endowment of $300,000, that's making 10% per year, that's enough to fund the students. Right? So why don't we ask God for an endowment of $300,000 a year? Does that seem reasonable to ask God for that? So if you've got 25 schools, that's $7.5 million. So why don't we ask God for $7.5 million? That sounds reasonable.
For
We don't have
25
that.
schools. For 25 schools.
For 25.
Per year.
Right? I've been some big donors, some big thinking. Now, some of you this is not the way you think. That's like it's simply how I think of themselves. Again, it's public conversation, getting to the full reverse mission in terms of helping big donors come and visit you here and get surprised at what you're doing and just think this is what they want to give to. Because Christians who are in leadership of large organizations, they just want to give. They want to delight themselves if they're giving. They want to see the money be effective. That money is out there across the world, and increasingly in Nigeria and Kenya, Nairobi, South Africa. As these cities develop, the money multiplies. Not just through oppression, but through good business. So that's it. Okay? I think he's saying that too. So I don't know if you agree. So I'm just throwing it to you. Secondly, we're saying the new wine doesn't fit the old wineskins. Jesus' new wine didn't fit 2 ways. Paul's congregations didn't fit in the cities he went to. But Jesus went to the synagogue. And Paul went to the synagogues first. So we work with the old wineskins, the academic institutions. But I think he's telling us create centers separate from the institutions, but connected to the institutions. So the model of the Center for Urban Mission here is that it's been connected to Carlisle College, which is connected to St. Paul's, which is connected to the Anglicans of the UK. And so there's been resource flows, but you've had a semi-independent, or perhaps independent dynamic that's protected you from certain structural deficiencies of academic institutions. And so I think Elena, she's a tough leader. She'd be able to keep a certain independence and you keep the respect within the institution. Is that support from the institution leadership to some extent. But then we had a big discussion last night. I was telling it one donor gave, and as I walked across the campus, it was announced that we had this big grant. So why did they do that? I walked across the campus, and different people come in. How did you get that grant? And my eyes was, how can I get my inroads to that grant? So every content, whenever the Lord starts blessing us, he says.
Dit is 20 minute op. Wat is die ander een?
Okay, so new wine don't fit the old wine skin. So from our tool commission perspective, to teach in the module, you must have a PhD. But you must also be working with it. And there must be a recruiter or administrator to make the program work. Program director must be an academic and an entrepreneur. We must raise our own sources of funding, and these have to be protected from the deans. I'm sorry for those of you who are deans. Having a dean is still a very, very difficult job. He's got to balance the resources, and it's a very difficult job. So we have to look at our deans, but we also have to protect what goes. So there's a few thoughts that are there, and I can suggest there might be another way of going forward. And maybe in your organization, you're doing this well, which is learning organizations as against academic institutions. And maybe that's the way forward in the future. But I don't quite know how to get there. And certainly we need to look at vocational educational approaches as against traditional academic approaches. There are CTOL, certificates of transformational leadership. There are even our bachelors need to be developed around a vocational educational approach. And maybe even with the governmental institutions, that's who we should be talking. So that's something we have had on the agenda to explore and never explore. And then fake spirituality prevents sustainability. We're talking about sustainability. I'm saying, well, let's raise money. We're talking about a course. I'm saying that's really, really dangerous. The better approach is to follow Alvin and Book. Let them decide to go and create businesses. We're going to listen to those I heard from we have talked of the courses in developing at the university. There was no science, there was no technology. And the economy won't develop if we create administrators, Christian pastors, ethics, social workers. This is not the way to create a sustainable society. Ultimately, unless you follow the Moravian model of building Christian communities of 5 families, where 3 families would stay and 2 would go on mission, because the 3 are making a lot of money from their farming, unless you can develop that kind of process, it's not going to happen. So the question is, how do we move the entrepreneurship processes into masters of business? And how do we get business is developing, Christian businesses developing? How rapidly we can get this going? How rapidly can we follow the technological pathways? Really might determine whether we can accomplish it. So what Darwin was being presenting just now, Diana, perhaps is the key to the whole process, not the foreign funding. Foreign funding is like, let's go get it while we can. It's just capital.
Yeah.
But it's not sustainable.
Yeah.
So these are my thoughts. I'm presenting them to you. I would ask you to consider Africa as next to India. Brothers here are here because perhaps I might welcome you to assist them in this process. So take the time to take it with all me and figure out what's God saying.
Question. Okay. Actually, when we were reading there, like urban poor leaders. So, what do you mean by urban poor leader? Can you just explain me? I'm confused with that because I don't see anybody leaders here poor. Yeah. So I was just confused with that term. Can you just give me more insight about that? What is urban poor leader?
You may not know the struggles.
Yeah, everybody has struggle, but why do we call them urban poor leader?
Leaders among the other. Whether they've emerged from the other poor, as many have here, or whether they've chosen to relocate among the poor, as many of the apostolics do. Either way, those who have chosen to live in solidarity among the poor, from the poor, or as upper class people, but their lives are committed to serving. I think it can be that as well. This session now, we want to look at the synergy that I mentioned before between different movements. Those online I was sharing before about grains of wheat and how a wheat field, every wheat stalk is different, and they move together in the wind, but they grow separately, but they move together. And that's really how the seeds of the kingdom also function as against the top-down hierarchical structure. So we want to look at the issues of city-wide leadership in terms of how they connect with your leadership among the other poor. And so I'm invited two highly respected leaders from across Africa who've influenced many thousands of people. One is Stefan de Beer, who's online, who I know across the years because of the urban mission circles. There's always discussions about different issues that go on. And he has in South Africa mentored many, and some of you here I think have been mentored by him, and created a lot of dynamics in terms of urban mission at the academic level. The other is Stephen Bogle. They're on their way in the car to find a way. And Rosemary teaching them how to. He is the president of Africa Enterprise, and probably one of the leading evangelists across Africa. African Enterprise ministers in many of the cities at city leadership levels, as well as Manipur. So very much significant mission. The center of leadership is not an MBA. It's not business administration. All the books you get on leadership talk about business administration, right? Center of leadership is fatherhood, because it derives from the very nature of God in Genesis chapter 1. So we talk of city fathers. So beyond what you're doing here, you may end up as a city father in the city of Kibera, which will be wonderful. So one of the works I've helped start, they've now taken over the city council of one city. They've become city fathers after 20 years working with the poor. This may be your role, right? Being city fathers. Fatherhood is inclusive. Fatherhood cares. A different style of leadership, isn't it? So it's worth expanding that idea and all that you do. And the best way to learn fatherhood is the kind of ministry you have here at the center of our ministry. And when I say fatherhood, see some of our sisters, there's also a sisterhood of leadership. And this, in many countries, rises up, particularly by the methodology of social work, community development, and education into political level roles. So wherever women can find a pathway, they'll find it. I think these two brothers are city fathers across many cities. And so just be interested to have their perspectives on what God is doing across Africa in the cities. And Stefan, we've been discussing this morning the idea of centers for urban mission connected to the universities or seminaries. In perhaps 25 cities across Africa, what would it take? It's the role of the Center for Urban Mission as a model of one of those. All the complications that might be involved in that. It's been an interesting discussion to be ongoing, so we'd love to have input and storytelling. So if you can switch it, can we switch to Stefan?